Hi, and welcome to your tutorial. I'm Nab from Mockexam.ca. You may know me from my mock exams or my famous IFC tutorial. Well, I did have lots of requests on preparing a good tutorial, a very solid tutorial on CIFC, and here we go. We do have one. First of all, thank you very, very, very much for your trust, and I'm sure you won't regret it. Before getting serious, please don't mind my glasses. It's not for look or beauty. I do have a vision problem. Actually, I'm legally blind. I do have 15 to 20% vision left. And that's why I have to wear glasses because my eyes are super sensitive to any types of lights. And don't get me wrong, my eyes might not see well, but my mind is super bright, and I'm sure I can help you throughout this journey. Let's set some ground rules here. Rule number 1. We are in this together, and we do share a single target. What's that target? Getting CIFs done. Rule number 2. The only thing I need from you is your full focus and attention. Let me take care of converting those boring textbook pages into smooth and sweet lectures, an exciting journey for you. Rule number 3, I have broken down every chapter into small lectures. Each lecture starts with an opening and intro talking about the topic, gives you an idea what we will cover in that lecture. And then you're going to see a slide related to that lecture. And in that slide, we will cover all the details, ins and outs related to that topic and lecture. Rule number 4, and the most important one, right after each lecture, not chapter, each lecture, you're going to see a quiz. And please take that quiz. I do have a reason for it. That quiz contains questions. It can contain 2 questions or 10 questions or 15. Okay, it depends on the topic. But those questions are type of questions you might get on your final test from that lecture. So you may ask, why didn't you put it just after each chapter? Why after each lecture? Because I don't want open tasks in your mind. After each lecture, depending on how easy or hard the lecture was, you might say, okay, I just watched this lecture, I learned everything, but what type of questions I might get from this topic? I want to solve that problem. I don't want any open tasks, any thinking, any wondering, and any guesses about that topic. We're going to close it right away. And please remember, throughout the course, if you have any question about a lecture, a chapter, a quiz, anything, you name it, just message me or ask in a Q&A part. I will respond ASAP. Again, thank you very, very, very much for your trust. And we will get it done together, I promise. Let's get started. All right, let's kick things off with a simple question. Who actually makes the rules when it comes to investing in Canada? You might think there is one big national body, but nope. Wait, it's actually a little bit more complex than that, okay? In this lecture, we are gonna break down Canada's unique securities regulatory system. We will talk about why each province has its own securities commission, how they all work together through the CSA, and where the zero comes into the picture. Let's get it done. Canadian Securities Regulatory Framework. Let's have a scenario here. Let's say you are from Ontario and you have a friend named Sarah from British Columbia. You guys both passed IFC or CIFC or CSC and now hired by a bank after 3 months of job shadowing and doing some teller jobs. Now it's time to become official. What do I mean by that? Your manager and Sarah's manager in Vancouver say to you guys that, hey, I'm going to register you with the regulator so you can legally sell mutual funds. So, if you want to sell mutual funds legally, you need to be registered somewhere. And remember, when you pass IFC or CIFC, you guys will become mutual fund dealing representative or mutual fund sales rep. Okay. Also, Sarah's manager hands her some forms to fill out to become registered. But your manager forgot to give you any form. Okay. You text Sarah that, hey, Sarah, could you please send me your forms? I will fill them out and give them to my manager tomorrow, because you think both forms are same. Like, you guys both started at the same time and you have a same role. So you thought both forms are same. She emails them over and you quickly complete them overnight. Now, the next morning, you proudly hand over your forms to your manager, expecting a high five. But instead, your manager bursts out laughing and will say to you that, hey, genius, these forms are for British Columbia, not Ontario. Every province has its own regulator. This is the point here. Okay, remember, every province has its own regulator. That being said, we get to Provincial Securities Commission. So, as I said, each province and territory in Canada has its own securities regulator, or the other name is Securities Commission. What do? They enforce the Local Securities Act. Okay. I will get to this Securities Act in just minutes. Um, these regulators, I mean, Provincial Securities Commission, they register companies and individuals selling securities. So if a firm wants to sell mutual funds to investors, they need to be registered under Provincial Securities Commission. Or if you, as a mutual fund sales rep, as a new one, want to sell mutual fund, you also need to be registered by Provincial Securities Commission. The next duty of them, they oversee new securities and mutual fund prospectus before they can be sold. So firms out there, they can't just come up with a security and sell it to the investors. No, the Provincial Securities Commission need to evaluate and assess the reliability of that security first, and then that firm can sell it to the investors. The third role or responsibility is investigate a Provincial Securities Commission or provincial regulators investigate complaints and enforce penalties for misconduct. Okay. If an investor doesn't like your service, they can complain to Provincial Securities Commission. The last responsibility, Provincial Securities Commission come up with some laws called Securities Act. And those who are registered with them need to obey the Securities Act. Okay, this is the time to talk about the Securities Act. Remember, Provincial Securities Commission, okay, have a rule for themselves. That rule, that combination, it's not just one rule. Okay, they have act. They have bunch of rules, which is under one name. That name is Securities Act. And firms and individuals like you, if you want to sell mutual funds, we said that you need to be registered with Provincial Securities Commission, and you need to obey that Securities Act. So whenever in the textbook you see the term Securities Act, you should remember that, okay, Securities Act is for Provincial Securities Commission. Each province have their own Securities Act. To wrap up the Provincial Securities Commission, based on our scenario and example, we said that in Ontario, your registration would go through the Ontario Securities Commission, or OSC, while Sarah in British Columbia would register under the British Columbia Securities Commission, or BCSC. Okay, great. Now, let's get to Canadian Securities Administrator. Let's elaborate it with our scenario. Your manager now will explain that while each province has its own regulator, there is a national group that helps them work together. What's that national group? It's CSA, or Canadian Securities Administrator. Okay. Let's see, what does CSA do? CSA is a national policy making group made up of all provincial securities regulator. So we said that every province has their own Provincial Securities Commission, but we are under the name of Canada. I mean, these provinces, they act independently, of course, but they need a coordination. They need an umbrella organization that coordinate and harmonize these provinces so that one province doesn't have an absurd and irrational rule. No, these, like we said, that all of them has their own Securities Act, but these Securities Acts are almost same in all provinces because they are under one umbrella organization, which is CSA. So, CSA is a national policy-making group made up of all provincial securities regulator. CSA come up with some laws called national instruments, and everybody should obey it. So, remember, we said Provincial Securities Commission have their own like laws which are called Securities Act. CSA also have their own laws, which is called National Instruments, okay, or NI. What's the goal of CSA? We said that the goal is harmonizing and coordinating securities regulation across provinces and nationally in our beloved country, Canada. But remember, CSA doesn't enforce rules, okay? Each province, each that Provincial Securities Commission or Provincial Securities Regulator will enforce its own laws. CSA CSA will be just like a teacher, okay? It doesn't enforce anything. Actually, teachers sometimes enforce something. It was a bad example, but you get the point, okay? CSA doesn't enforce rules. Provincial security, CSA just suggests rules, okay? But those suggestions, like all provinces, need to obey those suggestions, which are called national instruments. Great. Now, let's get to Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization, or CIRO. Now, let's get back to our scenario. Your manager continues and will say the Provincial Securities Regulator or Commissions gather together and say, hey guys, we are very, very busy. You know what? Let's make an organization and delegate some of our tasks to it. so we will be free and have lots of time. So all of Provincial Securities Commission let this CSA know about this idea to become lazy and delegate some of their tasks to an organization, and SRO was born. What's SRO? Self-Regulatory Organization, or SRO. SRO is baby of Provincial Securities Commission, okay? Throughout the years, we had several SROs. We had MFTA, IIROC, but a big change happened in 2023. What was that change? The Mutual Fund Dealers Association, which took care of all of the mutual fund dealers in the industry, and the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada, or IIROC, which took care of all of the investment dealers in Canada, merged together to form CIRO. Okay, this is the big change in 2023. Now we don't have a separate entity or SRO for mutual funds dealers and the separate one for the investment dealers. They are all merged together and work under CIRO. CIRO now oversees both investment dealers and mutual fund dealers. What are the duties of CIRO? Duties are almost same as Provincial Securities Commission, because those lazy guys delegates like most of their tasks to SRO, which is CIRO here. CIRO's jobs are register firms and advisors, ensure financial compliance, investigate misconduct, and enforce rules. And they come up with some laws called MFDA rules. I mean, CIRO didn't come up with MFDA rules. Of course, the Mutual Fund Dealers Association came up with those rules. But now that we don't have MFDA, these are for, of course, CIRO. Those which are registered under CIRO should obey it. So let's wrap it up so far. Provincial securities, every province has their own Provincial Securities Commission. They have a bunch of law, and that bunch of law is called Securities Act. Then we said that these provinces, they act independently, but they need an umbrella organization to take care of this coordination. That umbrella organization is called CSA, and CSA has their own bunch of laws, which is called national instrument. Then we said that this Provincial Securities Commission were lazy. They wanted to delegate some of their tasks to other private organization. Then SRO born. MFDA and IIROC merged together, a big change in 2023, and CIRO was born. CIRO, again, has its own bunch of laws and rules, which is called MFDA rules. So we have three sort of rules so far: Securities Act, National Instrument, and MFDA rules. Remember this. Now, let's get to OBSI. What's OBSI? Let's get back to our scenario. You will ask your manager, what if a client has a complaint against us? I mean, it will happen. You won't just see nice clients out there. Your manager replies, that's where the OBSI comes in. Now, please think of OBSI as the Judge Judy of the investment world. If a customer has a dispute with their bank or investment firm, they can complain to OBSI, okay? Let's say you are now a mutual fund sales rep, okay? You recommend an unsuitable mutual fund to your client, and your client will incur some losses because of your recommendation, that client can complain to OBSI about you, saying, "Hey, this guy." I mean, you will be a great mutual fund sales rep, by the way, or financial advisor. But I mean, it may happen, you know. I'm preparing you for those days. So OBSI will take care of this complaint. But there is a limit. So remember, OBSI has a limit. What's that limit? OBSI can only recommend compensation up to 350,000 Canadian dollars, but cannot force firms to pay. What does this mean? It means OBSI is not legally binding. Okay. I mean, OBSI just suggests that, okay, based on this situation, based on the incurred loss, based on the whole scenario, I recommend that, hey, bank, you pay, for example, X amount up to 350,000 to your client. I mean, I cannot force you to pay, but I highly recommend. And banks and those investment firms will usually listen to the OBSI and won't just say, no, I won't pay a penny to this client. No, I mean, it's an organization that everybody listens, of course. There is an exception. Quebec or Quebec, I think both pronunciations are right, but well, I'm going to say Quebec, has its own system under the AMF. So OBSI is translated to AMF in Quebec. Now let's get to OSFI. These names are very close to each other. I mean, it can be a challenge to remember, but you can remember. OBSI, remember, OBSI is Judge Judy. Okay. Now, OSFI, you would ask your manager. I mean, you're just keep asking your manager. Don't bother her or him. You ask your manager who makes sure that banks and insurance companies just don't go bankrupt and insolvency happens. That's a good question. Smart. Your manager replies, "Stop asking me question." No, your manager won't do that. I mean, maybe some managers do, but I don't think yours will do that. Your manager will nicely reply. That's where OSFI comes in. Office of Superintendent of Financial Institutions, or OSFI, is a federal regulator responsible for supervising which institutions? Banks like RBC, TD, Scotia, those big six banks and every other banks. Insurance companies like Manulife, Sun Life, federal credit unions, and pension plans. Okay, so OSFI is, remember, it's a federal regulator, not provincial. It's a federal regulator took care of that federally registered financial institutions, as I mentioned there. But what are the job or duties of OSFI? OSFI ensures that those banks and insurance companies remain financially stable and don't take excessive risks. Okay. They watch banks and insurance companies and put some limits and make sure, hey, they are stable. They prevent bank failures and protects depositors' money. They enforce capital and liquidity requirements to ensure financial institutions can survive economic downturns. But OSFI does not regulate mutual fund dealers or investment advisors. Okay. So to wrap it up, OSFI just take care of those federally regulated or federally registered financial institutions and watch them and make sure, hey, these banks or insurance companies or pension plans, pension funds, these don't go bankrupt. I mean, they have enough money out there in the reserve. They don't get into problems or they don't spend a lot. Okay. They watch them and make sure that investors' money are safe in that institutions. And remember, OSFI does not regulate mutual fund dealers or investment advisors. Last but not least, CSF. You continue asking your manager, does Quebec have its own SRO? We said that in other provinces, zero was our main SRO. But what about Quebec? Your manager replies, yes. And that SRO is called CSF, which is exclusive to Quebec. So, what do we mean by that? If you sell mutual funds in Quebec, you must be a member of CSF. Okay, CSF is a self-regulatory organization that ensures financial professionals follow ethical and compliance standards. What are the rules? Same rules as zero, of course. Enforce professional development and trainings, investigate complaints and misconduct, discipline advisors who break the rules. Okay, what are the key differences here? In other provinces, mutual fund reps register through zero. In Quebec, mutual fund reps must be registered with both zero and CSF. So, zero goes in Quebec too. That's a very, very good point. Mutual fund sales rep must be registered with both zero and CSF in Quebec. Great. Go crush the next quiz, and I'll see you in the next lecture. You, as a great future mutual fund dealing rep, you need to know the behind the scenes of mutual fund industry, like what legislation govern this industry. There are some sets of rules that are what keep everything fair, transparent, and secure. In this lecture, we're gonna talk about Securities Act, Common National Instruments, and MFDA rules, all about mutual fund legislation. Let's get it done. Mutual fund legislation. What's mutual fund legislation? Remember, before selling a single product or service to your client, you need to know and follow the rules that the three organizations, which we talked in previous lecture, come up with. What was those organizations and what was the rules? We said that each provincial securities commission or the other name is regulator come up with their own Securities Act. So one of them is Securities Act. Then CSA come up with national instrument. And then zero or before it was MFDA and IIROC, they came up with the MFDA rules. Okay, so you, as a registered mutual fund dealing representative, you need to follow these three sets of rules, which are for three different organizations. Now, let's recap. We said that the main laws and rules that we have in the mutual fund industry is a Securities Act, issued by provinces, a national instrument issued by CSA, a mutual fund dealer rules issued by SROs like Zero. Now, let's dive into details of each of these sets of rules. I mean, Securities Act, National Instrument, and MFTA rules. Let's dive deeper and know ins and outs of each of these sets of rules. Let's start off with Securities Act. Again, we said that every province in don't get mad at me. I'm repeating this because when I repeat, I'm sure it'll go straightly to your mind and you won't ever forget it. Because I'm repeating it because you will get question about this, okay? Sorry if I'm going into your nerve with repeating this stuff. I have to. This is my method of teaching. By repeating, I want you to memorize it unconsciously. You don't know it, but you are memorizing it. Okay. Every province in Canada has its own Securities Act. This is the foundation of all investment regulations. So, Securities Act is a foundation. Let's clarify with an example. Imagine you have a client named Michael who wants to invest in a mutual fund. Now, before you can recommend anything to Michael, you must be registered with, let's say you're from Ontario, with Ontario Securities Commission or OSC. Okay. Why do you need to register? Because each province enforces its own Securities Act through its securities regulator. Okay. What are the key takeaways here? The Securities Act governs all securities, including mutual funds, okay? Not just mutual funds, all securities. Each province has its own securities regulator to enforce the rules, okay? I think it's enough with Securities Act. I repeated it a lot. Let's get to national instrument. We said that national instruments or NIs are national rules created by the CSA. What do? They ensure consistency across Canada. Let's get into the most important national instrument rules for you as an advisor. If you want to become a registered mutual fund dealing representative, you need to know these national instruments. And I've seen like questions saying, okay, what does this national instrument do? Or what does this national instrument include? I mean, you don't need to memorize them, of course, but you have to have an idea. Okay, here. Let's get into the most five of the most important national instruments about mutual fund industry. National Instrument 31-103. What does it say? It covers the registration requirements. What do I mean by that? It determines who can register as an advisor, and it sets out the requirements for firms also. So, National Instrument 31103 covers the all registration requirement. Let's elaborate with an example. Since you are working as a mutual fund dealing representative, you must be registered under this rule before giving advice. Let's get to the second national instrument, which is 81-101. This covers the mutual fund prospectus disclosure. We will get to this prospectus or prospectus in the future chapters. So don't worry if you don't get the meaning here. But this national instrument ensures that mutual funds provide clear and accurate information to investors, and it defines what must be included in fund facts and the simplified prospectus. Okay, let's elaborate with an example. Michael is your client. He asks, where can I learn about this fund before I invest my money in it? You hand him the fund facts document and say, this contains key details about the fund's fee, risks, and past performance. So, why do you hand this? Because National Instrument Rule says to you that, hey, You have to provide this document to the client, okay? You're obeying the national instrument rule here. The third national instrument is 81-102. This is about investment funds. So the main rule book for mutual funds, this national instrument is the main rule book for mutual funds. It dictates how mutual funds must be managed, bought, and sold. Okay. It covers everything related to investing in the mutual funds. So it's one of the most important national instruments. Next one is National Instrument 81-105. This one is also important. It covers mutual fund sales practices. So it ensures that mutual funds are sold ethically and in the best interest of investors. Okay. It sets some minimum conduct standards for you and your firm. Let's elaborate with an example. Let's say Michael asks, if I invest in this fund, do you get a bonus? Okay. You will reply, I'm required to recommend funds based on what's best for you, not because of the bonus. Okay. Why? Because National Instrument 81-105 prevents unethical sales practices. Okay. So this rules, to wrap it up, these national instruments, they cover some important rules about registration, about acting ethically, about the mutual fund investment details and the documents, everything. Okay. You, as a mutual fund sales rep, you have to know these rules. And in your exam, you may get one question asking what, you probably not. We have moved from these types of questions in the last exams. But it's better to understand all, these five national instruments. But let's get to the MFDA rules. All mutual fund dealers must follow the mutual fund dealer rules. What do I mean by mutual fund dealer? I mean the financial uh, institutions that only sell mutual funds. These are called mutual fund dealers. Okay. So these financial institutions have to follow not just Securities Act, not just national instrument, but also the MFDA rules. So what do these rules cover? It covers business structures, conduct rules for firms and advisors, the financial and operational requirements, complaint handling and disciplinary process, the supervision of new registrants, minimum standards for account supervision, continuing education, and proficiency standards. Let's elaborate with an example. Let's say Michael, still your client, comes back a few months later and says, I want to file a complaint because I don't understand my account fees. Okay, Michael is always complaining. Stop, Michael. Um, Thanks to the mutual fund dealer rules, you know that your firm must have a complaint handling process. Okay. You must document the complaint and report it to the compliance team. And your firm must investigate and respond within a set time frame. These are all included in the MFDA rules. Now, you may say, okay, these three sets of rules, which are for three different organizations, these have lots of overlapping. Of course, they have, because they are all for one industry, which is mutual fund industry. I mean, all of these rules are trying to protect investors, trying to conduct and have a good and ethical business in this industry. Okay, these three sets of rules, they will have overlaps because they all share a same and single goal. Okay, to protect investors and to have a ethical and fair and honest business in this mutual fund industry. You don't have to memorize the roles and jobs of each of these um, sets of rules. No, you just need to know that, okay, Securities Act is for provinces, national instruments are for CSA, and some of the important national instruments are these. And then we have MFDA rules, which are for mutual fund dealers. Just the holistic view, okay? Nobody expects you to name all of the rules of the mutual fund like MFDA rules. No, nobody expects that. And if you encounter a question about, okay, naming all of the MFDA rules or all of the national, this is not that good question, and you won't get it. I mean, trust me. Great, go crush the next quiz because you will see what type of question you may get from mutual fund legislation. You are crushing it, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Ever wonder how Canada keeps dirty money out of our financial system? Meet the PCMLTFA, a powerful law that fights crime, protects investors, and keeps our market very clean. In this lecture, we're gonna dive deep into PCMLTFA, know ins and outs of this law that fights the money laundering and terrorist financing. Let's get it done. PCMLTFA. What a long acronym. So, it is Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act, PCMLTFA. What is this long acronym? It's a law in Canada that helps stop criminals from hiding illegal money and prevents the funding of terrorist activities. So, it's a set of rules and law, okay? We have two important terms here, money laundering and terrorist financing. Let's get to money laundering. Okay, please do not learn money laundering here. Okay, don't launder money. I mean, you won't, but you need this. You need to know this process because you have to detect the those clients are that may do the money laundering. Okay, to detect them, you need to know the process. Money laundering happens when criminals take dirty money from illegal activities and make it look clean by hiding its origin. What's the process? It has 3 steps. What are the steps? Placement, layering, and integration. You don't need to memorize these steps, okay? I'm just saying it because you have to know the process behind money laundering. Let's elaborate these steps with an example. Let's say a drug dealer makes a lot of illegal cash, okay? So placement. Now, if he deposited it into a bank as a cash and then buys stocks or property, so this is layering, it deposits that cash into a bank and then buys stocks or other stuff, it's layering. And then integration part, then when stocks go up, it sells that stocks and like open up a business. So the whole thing is it becomes very hard to trace the origin of that money because the drug dealer is doing lots of transaction, lots of hiding steps here. Okay. Now it looks like illegal money is just converted into a legal money. Okay. That's the whole process of money laundering. Now let's get to terrorist financing. It also has 3 steps. What are the steps? Fundraising, fund transfer and fund use. Terrorists need money to plan attacks. Okay. They hide where their money comes from, so authorities don't track them. Okay. So, fundraising step, where do they get their money? From people or organizations or government, even some governments support them. Or from, I don't know, illegal businesses like fraud or smuggling. Let's say a criminal group donates money to a fake charity, okay, which then sends it to a terrorist group. This is how can fundraising can happen. Then that charity transfers that money to that criminal group. Okay. It is coming. So the criminal group will get that money from a charity. It looks legit. Okay. Nobody will suspect a charity. And then that criminal group will use that money to buy weapons to attack a certain country or a certain community. To do a terrorist activity. So this is the whole process, which both of them are, of course, illegal things and not recommended. Now let's get to the rule, the PCMLTFA. This law, the main goal of Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act is to detect and prevent money laundering and terrorist financing activities. Who must follow this rule? Okay, there is a rule called this name. Who must follow it? Some businesses are more at risk of being used for illegal money activities. So they have to follow special rules. These include those types of businesses include banks and other financial institutions, insurance companies, money transfer businesses like Western Union, for example, or PayPal, real estate agents. Also, they need to follow this rule. Investment businesses, the jewelry and gold dealers, casinos. These are almost all businesses, they need to follow this rule. Okay. So we had in the previous lecture, we had those three sets of rules. We know that who should follow those three sets of rules. Now, these businesses that I mentioned need to follow also PCMLTFA rules. Let's get to some points here about this PCMLTFA. The businesses that I mentioned, banks, insurance companies, casinos, and real estate agents, investment businesses, those businesses need to appoint a compliance officer. What do I mean by that? Every financial institution must assign a person. That person's name or the role is called Chief Anti-Money Laundering Officer, okay, to oversee their anti-money laundering and terrorist financing efforts. So in their firm, we have a role. Actually, there is a certification, AML certification, anti-money laundering certification, which I believe is called CAMS. The most famous one is called CAMS. It is 900 plus pages. If you're interested in anti-money laundering, that's a good certification, by the way. So each of these businesses, financial institution, need to appoint a compliance officer, okay, or anti-money laundering officer. This person makes sure that the company follows all that PCMLTFA rules. Now, those financial institutions need to also set up rules and procedures. They not only follow the PCMLTFA rules, they also need to set up their own rules and procedures. The company or the investment firm or the financial institution must create policies and procedures to prevent illegal money activities. These includes know your client. We will dive a lot deep into know your client, verifying customers' identities before doing any transaction or business with them, enhanced measures, I mean, extra checks for high risk customers or businesses that could be involved in illegal activities. So these are customized for each financial institution out there. The third duty of these financial institutions is, or those businesses that follow PCMLTFA, is identifying suspicious activities. So the institution must watch transactions to spot anything unusual. I mean, it is usually will do automatically. They set an amount, for example, 10K, and then when somebody deposits or transfers more than 10K, it'll be red flagged, and the bank teller or financial advisor will ask that client, "Hey, okay, what's this? What's the source of this money? Who are you sending to?" I mean, there are some questions. There are some policies and procedures that the employees of that investment firm need to follow. That they must identify red flags. What are the red flags? Such as large cash deposits. If somebody comes with 50K cash in hand and wants to deposit it in a checking account, it's a red flag. You should ask, okay, buddy, you have 50K, good for you, but where did you get that 50K from? I mean, it may be legit, okay, no judgment, but when somebody have 50K, I mean, it's more of a red flag. It is suspicious. Come on, let's agree on that. It is suspicious, but maybe 10% it's legit. Okay, don't judge people. And then a rapid money movement is a red flag, or connections to suspicious people or groups is a red flag. The fourth duty or responsibility of those businesses that follow PCMLTFA is reporting suspicious activities. Okay, you identified suspicious activity. Now you need to report it. If anything seems suspicious, the company or investment firm or financial institution must report it to the government agencies. Okay. There are two government agencies, FINTRAC, which will be covered in the next lecture, Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada, FINTRAC, and CBSA, Canada Border Service Agency, for cases involving cash moving in or out of the country, okay? CBSA is for a specific transactions, not all the transactions. The main one is FINTRAC. The last responsibility of these financial institutions that follow PCMLTFA is training their employees. Okay. Employees must receive ongoing training to recognize money laundering and terrorist financing activities. Training helps them understand the warning signs and what steps to take. How would an employee know which transaction is a red flag or not? Okay. I mean, they may know it if they pass this tutorial. I'm just kidding. But financial institution must train their employees, okay? And it's not just one-time thing, it's ongoing thing because rules change over time. Great. You did a great job. Go crush the next quiz and you will see what type of question you may get from this lecture. I will see you in the next lecture. Imagine you started working at a bank and a client comes in and deposits 50K in cash, okay? And that client doesn't have any job. And when you say, okay, where did you get this 50K? He doesn't explain. This is a red flag. Okay, you as a great mutual fund dealing rep, you need to know that you have a responsibility when you see these types of red flags. What's your main responsibility? Reporting to FINTRAC. FINTRAC is an organization that takes care of these red flags, okay? There are a watchdog that monitors every transaction and every client to make sure everything is running smoothly in financial industry. Let's know about FINTRAC, everything, ins and outs, and your responsibilities and duties when you see such a red flag. Let's get it done. FINTRAC. What's FINTRAC? FINTRAC, or Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada, is Canada's financial watchdog. It's an organization that monitors money movement to stop money laundering. Okay, we talked about money laundering and terrorist financing. So it's an organization that watch individuals and corporations and detects the illegal money movement. Okay, now let's elaborate and dive deeper to FinTrack with an example. Let's say you work at a bank. A client walks in, and after a friendly greeting, you ask, how can you help her? She says she wants to open an account or conduct a transaction. Now, you, as a registered mutual fund sales rep, you must follow anti-money laundering and terrorist financing AMLTF regulations to ensure compliance with FinTrack requirements. What do I mean by this? I mean, this process includes verifying the client's identity, conducting due diligence, and reporting any suspicious activity. Let's break down each of these steps. Step one is verifying identity. Okay. How do we verify individuals and corporation? Let's start off with individuals. First of all, if a client comes to you, we ask for a government issued ID. Okay. Check that the client's name and appearance match the ID. Ensures the ID is authentic and confirm it has not expired. Okay. If in-person verification is not possible, use video meetings or mobile authentication technology. I mean, you may be laughing, okay, this is obvious. We have to check the ID. I know it's obvious, but just close your eyes and imagine it's a day at a bank and you're doing your job. Okay, this is exactly what you do. What you need to do is step by step. When a client comes in, you ask for a government ID. You match the appearance. You check out the expiration date. If the client can't come in person, you set up a video meeting and then a mobile authentication technology. Okay. Now, if a client doesn't have a government issued photo ID like a driver's license or a passport, uh, what do you need to do? What do you need to do? Or let's say you are suspicious about the ID. Okay. They have an ID, but you are suspicious. Banks can use 4 alternative methods to confirm their identity. I bet you don't know that. I mean, you knew about the ID, but these 4 you don't know. Okay, you have to listen. Um, the first alternative method is credit file check. The bank can check the client's credit history from a trusted credit bureau like Equifax or TransUnion. Banks usually don't do it. I mean, because it'll be a hard check and it'll affect the credit score, of course. Maybe it's a soft check for some banks, but I mean, banks usually avoid it. Okay. The second alternative method when you are suspicious about the ID or when a client doesn't have the ID is dual process method. Uh, what does it mean? The bank verifies the client's identity using two separate and reliable sources. Like what? A utility bill, like a electricity or internet bill with the client's name and address on it, and a bank statement or government document, okay? A bank statement from another bank, for example, or any government document. So it used two different documents to verify the identity of the client. The third alternative method is affiliate member confirmation. What do I mean by this? A bank can rely on a trusted partner or affiliated bank that has already verified the client's identity. Let's say your client, you work at RBC and your client have a history with TD. I mean, TD has verified your client. Through affiliated member confirmation, RBC can contact TD saying, "Hey, I do have this person which had businesses with you, accounts or mortgages or any other type of business. Do you confirm this identity? I mean, is he a legit person or what do you have about him?" I mean, banks have a system in place to uh, do to verify identity through this channel. The fourth alternative method is reliance method. What do I mean by that? The bank can depend on another trusted financial institution like a mortgage lender or lawyer that has already verified the client's identity. So it's like the third channel. If you cannot verify a client or entity's identity, follow your firm's policy and refrain from proceeding with the transaction until compliance requirements are met. Okay, you suspect the ID and you went through those four channels, alternative methods, and you're still suspicious. Okay, just reject that client. Um, I'm sure the firm that you work for has a procedure in place, has a rule in place, and that rule says, okay, refrain to open an account or conduct any business with that client. You have to follow that policy. Now, sometimes we do face corporation. It's not always about individuals. How do we identify and verify identity of corporations? If the client represents an entity like corporation or trust or partnership or fund like pension fund, confirm the entity's existence by reviewing official documents such as what? Such as corporate records, articles of association, partnership agreements. Okay. Individuals have government ID, corporations have corporate records or articles of association. Okay. When dealing with corporation to verify their identity, you have to review these documents. Additionally, identify the beneficial owners of the entity to ensure transparency and prevent illicit activities. Okay, somebody comes to you, say, okay, I'm a representative of Corporation X. You review the article of association or corporate records of that corporation. And then you also need to identify who are the owners, who is the director, decision maker there. Is this person who is saying I'm from Corporation X a legit person? Is his name on the owner's list? If you cannot verify a client or entity's identity, follow your firm's policies and refrain from proceeding with the transaction until compliance requirements are met. Exactly same as the individuals. Great. So in the first step, we verified identity, both for individuals and corporations. Now, the second step is conducting clients' due diligence. Even after verifying identity, further due diligence may be necessary in certain cases. What are those cases? Number one, third-party determination. You need to ask your client that, are they acting on behalf of another person or entity? You also need to ask, will another person or entity provide instruction on the account? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, you need to collect and document information on the third party. The second case that you need to follow the due diligence and do the due diligence is politically exposed persons, or PEPs. So who is PEP? Someone who holds or held a high government position in the last 5 years. Such as who? Such as prime minister or senators or mayors and government officials. So if Justin Trudeau comes to you to open up an account, you know he's a PEP because uh, he was a prime minister. He's not now. Uh, he was a prime minister, so he's a PEP. Okay. Then military generals and heads of state-owned banks or companies, judges of high courts or supreme courts, family and close um, associates of PEPs also count as PEPs. Okay, these are PEPs, politically exposed persons. We need to know that if our client is a PEP or not. What's HIO? So, who's HIO? Leaders of global organizations like UN, like World Bank, like IMF. These are HIO, so leaders of global organizations. Anyone who held this position in the last 5 years and their family members and associates are also HIOs. Let's wrap it up. By checking for that third parties, PEPs, and HIOs, banks help prevent fraud, corruption, and terrorist financing. They must collect extra details and monitor these client transactions. So we had a normal client, individual, normal corporation. We identify those clients. We talked about it. Then we have special clients, okay? Third party determination, the PEPs, HIOs, these are special clients. We need to take more steps and take these clients and monitor these clients more closely, okay? Because these are at more risk of money laundering or terrorist financing. You, as a mutual fund sales rep, you need to know that if a transaction seems suspicious or unusual, you need to immediately report that transaction to your firm's compliance department, and that compliance department will report that transaction or that activity to FINTRAC. Okay? But what are those red flags? What are those suspicious activities? They may include large cash deposits, more than 10K. If you go to your mobile bank right now, you cannot e-transfer more than 10K. The maximum is 10K. That's the root of That's because of the FINTRAC rule, okay? That's the root here. The second red flag or suspicious activity or transaction is frequent international wire transfers with no clear business purpose. If you encounter and face these types of suspicious activities, you must document the details of the transactions, okay? What details? Like client information, the name, last name, address, everything. The nature of that transactions, the reason for the reason for suspicion. You have to mention and document everything when you face such a client. You have to document these details. What if you're lazy and don't document anything? Failure to report suspicious transactions can result in legal consequences and regulatory penalties. So please document them. Don't be lazy. Great. This was about FINTRAC. We had individuals, normal individuals. We identified them. And if we're suspicious about their ID, we had those 4 alternative channels and methods to verify their identity. Then we had normal corporations. Then we have special uh, clients like third party determination, PEPs, and then HIOs, and the do's and don'ts about the suspicious activities. What are the examples of suspicious activities and transactions, and what do we need to do? What do we need to document? We covered everything about FINTRAC. And you are learning a lot. Thank you very, very much for your trust. Please go crush the quiz and you will see what type of question you may get from this topic on your final test. And keep this in mind that I may explain a lot because I don't want you just be prepared for your exam. Okay, this is our main goal. I know, and we will definitely pass the exam together. Don't worry about it at all. But after all, you want to be and become a financial advisor or any role in bank. You need to when you're learning something, you need to make sense of it. I put it in a scenario based style teaching, or I put in lots of examples, lots of details to, uh, and I want you to imagine the whole scenarios, the whole topics and concepts and the steps in your mind. That's why I'm explaining a lot. I'm sorry if I'm bothering, but I have to do it because I want you to learn everything, ins and outs about that topic. Great. Go crush the quiz. I'll see you in the next lecture. We all go to bank and an advisor asks us some information, some personal information like name, address, sometimes SIN number, and even government sometimes asks us these information. These are all personal information. Have you ever wondered, okay, every organization is getting our information. Are my information safe? Like, is there anybody that protects our information? What if somebody misuse, or what if somebody like share my information with others? In this lecture, we're gonna talk about 2 laws, PIPEDA and privacy legislation. These laws ensure us that, hey, our information is safe. There are some limitations in place, like who can access our information? What can they use our information for? Can they share our information with? Okay, in this lecture, we're gonna learn everything about PIPEDA and Privacy Act. Let's get it done. Privacy legislation, more specifically, Privacy Act and PIPEDA. So, what's privacy legislation? You, as a mutual fund dealing representative, you must you know that you must collect personal information from your clients when opening an account. Name, address, everything, all um, information, personal information. But you must keep this information that you collect private. So, privacy legislation are laws that protect this information. These laws control how personal information is collected, used, and shared, ensuring it stays safe and confidential. Because if breach of information, personal information happens, the client will be in a huge danger. Let's elaborate this whole privacy legislation with a scenario and example. Imagine you are a financial advisor at a bank, and a new client named Sarah has scheduled an appointment. She came to you and she wants to open a TFSA or RRSP account and start investing. Now, after a warm greeting and offering a coffee, maybe, you begin the process by helping Sarah fill out some forms. What are those forms? New Client Application Form, or NCAF. To create her account, to open an account, you need to, or Sarah needs to, fill out the new client application form and know your client, or KYC form. What's KYC form? That form is required to understand the Sarah's financial goals and risk tolerance. So, actually, these two are not separate forms. These two, in some institutions, these are just one form, okay? Because these two forms have lots of overlapping items. So, by filling out these forms, what are you collecting from Sarah? You are collecting Sarah's personal information. Like what? Like name, date of birth, address, employment, maybe SIN number, her income, her investment goals and risk tolerance. Um, so you're collecting these information from Sarah. But there is a point here. Sarah must, okay, here it's must. Sarah must consent to Zero accessing her data. So what's Zero? Zero is SRO organization. These information are shared with Zero because Zero wants to protect Sarah. How can Zero protect Sarah without having access to her information? So Sarah must consent, okay? It's not optional, it's a must. It's obligated, mandatory, okay? Now, if Sarah refuses to allow her information to be shared with Zero, what will happen? You legally cannot open her investment account. This is because Zero needs access to client data to enforce regulations and protect the integrity of the financial system. That's why it's a must thing. Great. Um, so we've, you as a mutual fund sales rep, you complete and fill out some forms with Sarah. You help Sarah fill out those forms. Now, Sarah might wonder, how do I know my personal information is safe? She will ask you, okay, how do I know my personal information is safe? Now, you, as a financial advisor, you follow privacy laws here, okay? Those laws set strict rules on how you collect, use, and share. Remember, collect, use, and share her information. So, there are three uh, laws. We have PIPEDA, we have Privacy Act, and we have provincial privacy laws. Okay. What's PIPEDA? PIPEDA or is Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act. This is Canada's private sector privacy law, okay, which protects how businesses handle personal information. Businesses like banks, investment firm. So PIPEDA is a set of rules, okay? Banks need to follow those rules on collecting and sharing personal information of their clients. Okay, the second rule that is related to privacy of the client is the Privacy Act. This law applies to government institutions and protects personal data they collect. So PIPEDA was for federal and private institutions like banks, investment firms, but the Privacy Act is for government institutions. Okay, and the third one is provincial privacy laws. Provinces like Quebec, Alberta, British Columbia have their own privacy laws, which replace PIPEDA in those regions. Okay, so PIPEDA does not apply to all provinces. Specifically, these three provinces, which are Quebec, Alberta, and British Columbia, they have their own provincial privacy laws. Great. So, all of these laws, these three laws, they ensure that Sarah must give consent before her information is collected, used, or shared. So Sarah signed that form saying, okay, I consent that you collect, use, and share my information. If you notice, every form that you fill out in a bank or investment firm or any financial institution, there is check mark saying you need to check that, saying, okay, I consent that, blah, blah, blah. That's the thing that you are consenting to share and to give your personal information. These rules also ensure that Sarah has the right to access her personal data and correct any errors. So let's say bank collects Sarah's information and her date of birth is November 19th. But when she creates an account and after, I don't know, a month, she noticed that in her profile, her date of birth is mentioned as December 19th. It's a wrong thing. So Sarah needs to have access and correct any errors. Okay. These rules ensure that. Then these rules also ensure that Sarah's information is only used for its intended purpose, like opening her investment account. Okay, it cannot be used or it cannot be shared to other data looking company for another purposes. Okay. Last but not least, these three rules ensure that financial institutions must keep her data safe with security measures. Okay, they cannot just put Sarah's data in their website without any security measures. Okay, I mean everything is now stored in a cloud, obviously, and that cloud needs to have a very serious security measures. Great. Now let's get to the sharing part of the information. So Sarah's information might be shared with certain organizations, but not always, when necessary. For example, what are those organizations? We said that zero, the SROs cannot be restricted from access to personal information about clients under privacy legislation. We talked about it. Since the SROs need access to personal information about clients to fulfill their regulatory obligations, they issued a joint regulatory notice on federal and provincial privacy legislation, the joint notice. So, in summary, that joint note, they signed something with provincial privacy legislations and PIPEDA saying, hey, this is called joint notice, okay? Hey, I want to access your client's personal information because I want to protect this industry and the client and the firm and everyone, okay? To protect everyone, I need to access to this information. Another organization that the Sarah's data or client's data may be shared with is CRA, famous Canada Revenue Agency, might need Sarah's SIN number for tax reporting, for example. Also, the investment firm's compliance team may review the Sarah's KYC form. So we said that every financial institution, bank, investment firm, everyone has a department called compliance department. That department may access to Sarah's KYC form, which consequently have access to Sarah's personal information. Okay. We said that Sarah's information may be shared with Zero, with CRA, with investment firms compliance team, but remember that no one can use or share client's data, in our case, Sarah's data, without a valid reason or her consent. Okay. There should be a reason to access to her information. They cannot just access it without any valid reason. Now, let's imagine Sarah suddenly wants to deposit a very large amount of money in cash. So this rings a bell, and you may say, okay, it's a red flag. Okay, this might be a red flag for money laundering. As a financial advisor, what should you do? You must report the transaction to your firm. To be specific, to your firm's compliance team or department. But remember, you should not let Sarah know that you are doing it. Okay? If Sarah is depositing large amount of cash, you can't just say, okay, Sarah, I want to report you because it's a red flag. No, Sarah shouldn't know about it. You just report it, document everything. Those details that we talked in previous lectures, okay? You have to document them and then report it to your compliance department. Remember, you have to follow anti-money laundering procedures to ensure compliance, even if the transaction doesn't go through. So, you may not deposit Sarah's money in her checking account because she looks suspicious. You still need to document and report this event, okay? Even if the transaction didn't happen, okay? Keep this in mind. Then, when you report the transaction and event to the compliance team, the firm's compliance team, may review her KYC form. In case of fraud prevention or financial crime, information may be reported. That's the example of how compliance team will get access to Sarah's information. Great. To sum it up, okay, every client has personal information. You as a future mutual fund sales rep and as an awesome one, you collect information, okay? And you use them for certain interactions and certain transactions. And you can share them for valid reasons with specific organizations that we just name it. this whole slide, this whole lecture shows how the personal information of the clients are protected. How can they be shared with other agencies? Great, you're doing a great job. You're crushing it. Please take the quiz and you may see what type of question you may get from PIPEDA or Privacy Act. I'll see you in the next lecture. Imagine you're having your delicious meal, okay, your dinner, and suddenly somebody calls you, a bank, an advisor from bank, and you'd be like, okay, like, how did they get my number? Why are they calling me? Or you get lots of emails every day, lots of emails when you actually didn't subscribe to those email lists. In Canada, we have two laws, the NCL and CASL. These are called telemarketing laws. These laws give us, as just normal people, a power to set the fact that who can contact us and why, okay? And you, as a mutual fund dealing representative, as a future one, you can't just have list of numbers and contact people. No, you need to make sure that those numbers are not in DNCL or CASL list. In this lecture, we're going to dive deeper into these two telemarketing laws, and we're going to know everything, ins and outs and exceptions and referral arrangements, everything about these two laws. Let's get it done. Telemarketing laws, more specifically DNCL and CASL. What's DNCL? DNCL is the do not call list, or DNCL is a list of phone numbers belonging to people who do not want telemarketing calls. Okay, you cannot call them and sell something because they are in DNCL list. And what's CASL? It's Canada's anti-spam legislation. CASL, Canada's anti-spam legislation, prevents businesses from sending unwanted emails, text, and messages to people. Let's dive deeper and describe these two telemarketing laws with a scenario. Let's say you work at a bank. You are in your office at 10 a.m. with a coffee in hand. You're enjoying your coffee. And your manager comes in and say, "Hey, I need you to call these 100 clients and try to cross-sell them something. I don't care what, but sell them something. Ask if they need a new credit card or want to invest their money. Do something here, don't drink your coffee." I mean, this won't happen, but just imagine, okay? He will ask you nicely. Managers are nice here in Canada. With this example and scenario in mind, let's define DNCL. So we said that the National Do Not Call list is a list managed by the CRTC. What's CRTC? Canadian Radio and Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC, that allows consumers to block telemarketing calls. So we have a list called DNCL list. This list is managed by CRTC. Okay, simple. But who does DNCL apply to? Can everyone just put their name there? Any business making unsolicited calls to sell products or sell services, including financial services, okay? Any business making unsolicited calls. If someone is on the DNCL list, and if you are working in any business, especially in a bank or financial industry, you cannot call them if they are on the list, okay? Mutual fund dealers must maintain their own DNCL, and clients can ask to be added to it. Okay, if, for example, if I am a client of RBC, RBC can be a mutual fund dealer and investment dealer at the same time. Okay, the RBC should have its own DNCL. I can say to them, put me on the DNCL list. I don't want any telemarketing calls from you guys. Okay, so it's a mandatory thing for mutual fund dealers. You, as a mutual fund sales rep, okay, you can call existing clients about services they already have. For example, your client has an investment or account changes or regulatory updates. I mean, something about something related to the account of your client, and it's serious, and your client is on the DNCL list, you still can call them because it's not, you're not calling to cross sell something to them. You're just calling about their account to give them an update. Okay. You cannot, you as a mutual fund sales rep, you can't call new clients or former clients who have stopped doing business with your firm for over 18 months if they are on the DNCL list. Okay, great. But what happens if you break the DNCL rule? If James reports your firm, James is a client. Okay, if James reports your firm, the CRTC, who managed the DNCL list, can issue fines and penalties. So, before calling, always make sure and check if the number is on the DNCL list of your corporation and CRTC or not. This is funny because, I mean, every day I personally get lots of scam calls and texts, and this is weird that Canada couldn't prevent these scammers. Um, I think it shouldn't be that much hard. They should have a system in place for blocking these calls and text messages that the scammers do. Now, this is about DNCL. So you called those 100 clients, just like your manager asked, and none of them were on the DNCL, fortunately. Now, it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon. You're having your second coffee. And guess what? Your manager comes in again and will say, okay, now I need you to email a list of 500 clients. Tell them about our new investment options and special promotions. And you'll be like, I'm tired. No, you won't be that. I'm tired. You will start typing an email, but wait, can you send this email legally? I mean, is there any limitation just like calling people? Yes, there is. And it's CASL. What's CASL? Canada's anti spam legislation protects people from getting unwanted commercial emails. Okay. It requires businesses to get permission before sending promotional email. There are some key rules about CASL. What are those rules? You need you as a mutual fund sales rep. You need consent, okay, before sending promotional emails. The client must opt in, okay. I mean, they need to opt in with their own choice. It shouldn't be automatic. Okay, they need to opt in and be in your list. Your email must include your name and company info, an easy unsubscribe option. That's a good one. If you notice all promotional emails, on the bottom of that email content, you will see unsubscribe button. This is because of CASL. CASL made that unsubscribe button mandatory for all promotional emails. Great. Remember, you as a mutual fund sales rep, you cannot send emails to random people who never agreed to receive them. Okay, stop doing that. Don't bother people. You won't do it, I'm sure, because you're a brilliant mutual fund sales rep. But let's say, what if someone refers you a client? Okay, this is where referral exemption comes in under CASL. Let's say your colleague, Sarah, I think Sarah is the only name that I know. In my all examples, I use Sarah. I should change that name. But let's say your colleague, Sarah, tells you, hey, my client, Michael, might be interested in an investment product. Send him an email. Now, can you email Michael? The answer is yes, but only once. Okay. So CASL allows one email to a referred person without prior consent. If the referral comes from someone who has an existing relationship with the client, the second condition, you disclose who referred you. For example, in your email, you say, Sarah mentioned you might be interested in our investment option. Okay. Third condition, you include your business's info and subscription button, of course. But be careful. If Michael doesn't respond or opt in, you cannot send the second email. That's the key point. Great. We just covered the telemarketing laws. We know that you cannot just call people or email people. There are some rules in place to protect the clients. And we also covered the referral exemption point. You are doing great and you're crushing it. Please go take the quiz, and I'll see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we are gonna talk about a law that's a US law, but all financial institutions in Canada needs to follow this US law. What's that law? That law is called FATCA or FATCA. This law states that any US citizen anywhere in the world, okay, outside US, when they come to a bank outside US to open up an account, they need to give their US tax information to the advisor. Okay? Why? Because the US government wants to catch those guys who live outside US and who are making good amount of money, but they are not paying tax to US government. Okay? US government want to make sure everybody pays tax. Doesn't matter where they live. Okay? In this lecture, we're gonna dive deep, zoom in, and know everything about this FATCA rules. Let's get it done. FATCA. What's FATCA? Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act is a US law that helps prevent tax evasion by requiring banks and financial institutions worldwide to report financial accounts held by US citizens and residents. Basically, it makes sure Americans don't hide money in foreign banks to avoid paying US taxes. Okay, so it's a US law that every financial institution in whole world need to follow and obey that law. Now, Let's elaborate on FATCA points with a scenario and with an example. Let's say you work at a bank. A client named, let's switch from Sarah to Lisa. Okay. Lisa walks into your office for her appointment. She's excited to open up an investment account and start growing her money. After a warm greeting, you start the usual process of opening an account. You will say, Lisa, I'll need to see your ID. Remember, we said identity first, identify the identity. Lisa, I'll need to see your ID before we proceed. She hands you her passport, and you notice something very, very important. She's a US citizen. Now, you must follow the US Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act or FATCA rules, and you should ask Lisa to fill out the uh, FATCA or FATCA declaration form. Okay, this rule has a declaration form, so US citizens in countries other than US need to, I'm talking about the Canada. US citizens in Canada needs to fill out that declaration form. But Lisa, may I ask you, what's FATCA? And you, as a financial advisor, you will describe and say, um, FATCA is a US law, okay? It catch US taxpayers who try to hide money in foreign accounts. I mean, you shouldn't say that to Lisa because you should say it in a sweet words, but this is the whole definition of FATCA, okay? Now, to enforce this, FATCA requires Canadian financial institutions like banks and investment firms to, number one, identify US clients, okay? When they identify them, number two, they need to report their accounts to the CRA or Canadian Revenue Agency, Canada Revenue Agency. Let's say you don't do that, you don't follow and comply with this FATCA rules. What happens? If compliance does not happen, if a financial institution does not follow FATCA rule, there is a 30% tax penalty on US income of that financial institution. Okay? 30% tax penalty on US income. Now, the Canadian government agreed to help enforce this law, which is why your firm must follow FATCA TCA rules. Now, let's get back to our example and scenario. Since Lisa is a US citizen, she's automatically a US person for tax purposes, even if she has lived in Canada for years, okay? But what are other signs that a client may be a US person? Of course, US passport is a big sign, or US green card is a big sign that this client is a US person. US mailing address, this rings a bell that, hey, this client might be a US person. US phone number, if the place of the birth in the ID is US, okay? If any of these apply, FATCA requires you as a mutual fund sales rep to ask follow-up questions and to ask your client to fill out the declaration form and then report it to the CRA. Great. Now we said that Lisa is a US person, okay? You should ask Lisa to certify her US status by filling out the declaration form. Then provide her US taxpayer identification number, TIN. Okay. It's like SIN in Canada. We have SIN, they have TIN or TIN. Then understand that your role, Your job is to understand that her account details will be reported to the CRA, which will then send the information to the US IRS. So we have CRA in Canada. In US, it's IRS. When you, as a mutual fund sales rep, you identify a US citizen, you report it to CRA. I mean, by you, I mean your bank will report it to CRA. CRA then will send all of the information of that client to IRS in the US to avoid that 30% penalty, okay? So what would you say to Lisa? You will say, Lisa, because you are a US citizen, we must report your account details to the CRA under FATCA rules. This is a government requirement and it helps ensure compliance with US tax laws. Sorry that I cannot avoid this. You need to apologize to Lisa, of course. Now, there is a challenge here. What if Lisa refuses to provide her US tax details? This is a challenge. How should you, as a mutual fund sales rep, handle this challenge and situation? Under FATCA, if a client doesn't cooperate, the bank or any financial institution must still report their account as a US account to the CRA. It doesn't matter if Lisa cooperates or no. You have to report that to the CRA, okay? Lisa's account will be flagged and reported to the US IRS, even if she doesn't provide her tax details. This is why it's important to explain FATCA clearly to Lisa and all of your clients, US clients, I mean, so they would understand their obligation. What a great lecture and what a great chapter. Thank you very, very much for your attention and for your trust. You're doing great. Please go crush the quiz. I'll see you in the next lecture.